South Africa's unemployment rate has declined marginally in the fourth quarter, in line with market expectations. The unemployment rate declined to 27.1%. Economists expected the decline, supported by seasonal hiring in the fourth quarter. The largest increases in employment were recorded in finance and other business services, as well as private households. The manufacturing, mining and trade sectors have recorded some gains. Employment declines were recorded in community and social services, as well as transport and construction. The low economic growth and sluggish investment climate are to blame for the depressed job prospects. Economists expect the labour market to remain constrained until there's substantial investment in the economy. For more on this, I'm joined by economist Miyelani Maluleke from ABSA. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. That slight dip in unemployment was pretty much expected.
That's right. So I think the important thing to take into account is that in the fourth quarter, because these numbers are not seasonally adjusted, you typically tend to see a slight increase in employment, particularly in the trade sectors. And I think we kind of saw a little bit of that in this quarter as well. And I think for me, the key thing is that these gains that we've seen, is this employment creation that we're going to see sustained. And I think there's reason to be a little bit concerned given the overall performance of the economy and the new challenges that we're seeing as well.
We saw that employment rose by 149,000 to 16.53 million. I know you've said it's quite a depressed climate. Can we start to say we're seeing any green shoots from that job summit or investment summit that was held last year?
It's still a bit early because, one of the things I was expecting to see, after the investment summit, of the job summit, was some evidence that, we're actually starting to see an improvement in business confidence. But when you look at business confidence indices from the fourth quarter, which is a quarter that we're also looking at in terms of this jobs report, business confidence was actually still quite depressed. And as we know, that does not bode very well for investment in the economy. And we're certainly not seeing any early signs that investment is actually picking up, and that will be critical for employment creation going forward. And I think for me, that is the concern. Although I think it's encouraging that we've seen some stability in terms of jobs in Q4, it's just that going forward, it's hard to see these gains being sustained.
President Ramaphosa and other ministers in his cabinet have spoken about this decade or 9 or 10 years of things that were lost and problems that were created. We saw in 2008, I think that was the lowest unemployment rate at around 21.5%. What do we do to get back to that or lower?
We need to grow, and I think that is, for me, the fundamental issue here. If you look at just private sector investment as an example, between 2010 to 2017, we were growing at like 1.5%. You compare that in the period from 2000 to 2007, when we're seeing annual average growth of around 9.5% in private sector investment. And for me, part of the answer for the unemployment problem lies there, that we're not seeing the private sector investment that we need to be seeing in order to sustain employment creation.
When the budget comes up on the 20th of February, what are you expecting Finance Minister Tito Mboweni to say to try and alleviate some of these issues that you pointed out?
Look, I think it's going to be very difficult because, on the government side, there's also a lot of pressure. I think we've seen, as an example, that Eskom has got very deep financial and operational issues. It needs financial assistance. The president has already indicated that there has to be some sort of support to Eskom. We don't really know what sort of form and shape that support is going to take. But the reality is that government itself is running very big budget deficits. So there is pressure to consolidate on the fiscal side as well. But, you sort of look at the revenue side, you realize that there isn't really much more that he can do to get more tax revenues from households. But at the same time, when you look at the expenditure, it's also very difficult to cut. So I'm not expecting a budget that is very strong in terms of fiscal consolidation, but I also don't expect a budget that's going to provide a lot of relief, at least in terms of tax cuts to businesses or consumers, because the government just quite simply does not have that space right now.
When we're speaking about Eskom, some economists have estimated that for every 13 hours that we're being load shed, it costs South Africa 2 billion rand. Do you think that's a correct assessment? And also, what kind of an impact is this load shedding going to have on us and on jobs in the long term? Yeah,
it's a really good point. I think it's very difficult to know the exact cost of 13 hours because our economy is very diverse. We do very different things. It's possible that figure is close to the truth, but I don't think we know with certainty. But for me, the key thing is that if you sort of go back to the State of the Nation address 2019, there was a very strong focus on trying to lift private sector investment in South Africa. But when we cannot guarantee security of electricity supply, I think it becomes very difficult for us to build the necessary confidence that you need for private sector investors to actually come in and commit to long-term projects.
But it seems as though there has been a push from President Ramaphosa to say that, South Africa is a good investment destination. When they went to Davos with his government, they were saying we're ready on most sectors. We've got a good business climate. We've got a young labor force. We've got an eager labor force. Yeah. That doesn't seem to be translating into the private sector here investing as much as necessary. Yeah,
certainly not. I think the problem is exactly that. You can have a lot of things going for you, but if you have one critical thing that doesn't really work, then it becomes really difficult. I think you're right. There's certainly lots of advantages to the South African market. It's got a very young labor force, very dynamic labor force. I mean, we certainly could be doing better in terms of education and skills, but when you can't guarantee electricity security, it becomes difficult, especially to create the kind of industries that we're saying we want to create in South Africa.
Thanks so much for your time on SABC News. That was economist Miyelani Maluleke from ABSA. We're going to stay with those job numbers. I'm joined from our